friends, this is Bob Hatton with some encouraging words for you. I hope you're well, and I do hope that you have a good day today. I want to continue with our story from the Acts of the Apostles. Yesterday we were talking about disappointment, even though Peter was released from prison, and that as an answer to prayer. James was unfortunately executed, although the church probably prayed for him as well. Let's just press on now. Now, King Herod has left Jerusalem in the province of Judea, and he's gone back home to a place called Caesarea, which was in the north of the country, close to the Mediterranean Sea. And he had an audience with some people from Tyre and Sidon. They're two cities which are today in Lebanon, but he had a dispute with them, and they decided that they needed to be reconciled with Herod, because Herod supplied the cities and the countryside round about with food. So they decided to have a meeting. Herod invited them. This is actually an historic moment that was recorded by secular historians, and it seems to be on the 5th of March in the year 48 AD. And so Herod, he put on his kingly garments, and according also to secular historians, these were magnificent. It was a magnificent robe which reflected, it absorbed the sunlight and also reflected. It must have been something like the King Louis XIV of France, who they called the Sun King. And it was magnificent. And then he began to speak. Let me just read then what happened in verse 21 of Acts chapter 11. And it says there, on an appointed day, Herod put on his royal robes, took his seat upon his throne, and delivered an oration to them. And the people were shouting, the voice of a God, not of a man. And immediately an angel of the Lord struck him down, because he did not give God the glory. And he was eaten by worms and breathed his last. What a horrible story. He was eaten by worms. Why did the angel strike him down? Well, as he began his oration, his speech, must have been a very good talk that he gave on that day. Very eloquent and very good oration. And the people started to shout, that is not the voice of a man, that is the voice of God. And they elevated him onto the level of a god. And Herod didn't contradict them. He didn't quiet them. He didn't correct them. He must have believed them as well. Yeah, a voice of a god. My voice. And because he didn't give God the glory, the angel came and struck him. And as the Bible says, his body was eaten by worms. Now, God is very jealous about his glory, about his honor, and he's not going to share that with anyone. That's what the Bible tells us in the book of Isaiah. He is not going to share his glory with anyone. Now, in many countries, and I realize people are listening today who live in India or Nepal or places in Africa, and in these countries we can find idols on nearly every street corner, idols that people worship. In Western Europe, where I live in Germany, this isn't quite so. We don't have idols that have been made by men, but just like in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 14 and verse 3, the Bible says that men have installed idols in their hearts. And in Western Europe, in Germany, people have installed idols in their hearts. We don't have them on the street corners, painted with bright colours, but we have them in our hearts. What are these idols? Well, I think one idol would be, for instance, the economy. Now, in the time that we are living in, this coronavirus crisis, a time that I've never experienced anything like it before, where everything is being shaken. And the Bible tells us in the Old Testament and in the New Testament that God is going to shake all things. And I'm wondering, is this the shaking, what the Bible is talking about? And what has happened because of this crisis that's taken us by surprise in January, February, we didn't really expect that this was coming, but it has come, and this has got a hold of the German economy. The German economy is faltering, and it has been very, very strong. For the past number of decades, it's been a strong economy, very strong in the world, the strongest economy in Western Europe. And this has become something like an idol to us. Now, not everything is bad about having a strong economy. That takes away a lot of worries that we don't have. Friends in other countries are going through, especially at this time where it's very, very difficult for them. And of course, here in Germany and in other countries in Western Europe, people are talking about a bigger percentage of people who live in poverty. They talk about a greater number of children who are living in poverty. We have organizations like the Tafel, that means the table. It's an organization that provides food for homeless people or for people with not enough income to buy enough food for themselves. And the number of people, needy people, is growing. But generally, we are doing very well. We are quite well off. And the problems that people have here are things like, where am I going to spend my second holiday in this year, or my third holiday in this year? Those are the big problems that we have, generally speaking. Of course, there are many exceptions, and I feel that God has put his finger upon this idol of the economy that we have. Now, in the Bible, in Hebrews chapter 13, the Bible tells us that our lifestyle should not be full of the love of money. It should not be determined by greed, but rather we should trust God. And then in verse 8 of Hebrews chapter 13, it says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He never changes. We've had a strong economy for quite a long time. The government has now been very generous and has put a lot of money into the economy. They've given people special help. They're dropping some taxes and hoping that we will buy more stuff and so on. It's a risky thing, and if it goes wrong this time next year, we'll be in deep trouble as far as the economy is concerned. And now the economy is being shaken. Jesus Christ, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And it's much better to trust him than to put our trust in any other idol. Now, what other idols do we have? Well, we have maybe our career, which also was something that was very secure and very certain that after a certain number of years, you would just continue to climb the ladder. Suddenly, that is also been put into question. Maybe it's sport. Maybe it's technology. And surely technology will help us out of this crisis. But up till now, technology has not found the answer, not found a solution to this crisis. All these idols, all these things which taken by themselves are all okay. There's nothing wrong with them. But as we install them into our hearts as idols, then we are defiling the first commandment. You shall have no other God besides me, is what Jesus says. Now, all the time as we're speaking about this, if God is starting to shake the world and shaking all things, he is speaking then first of all to his church, to his children, because the Bible says judgment must begin at the house of God. It must begin with the household of faith. So please, dear friend, brother and sister, would you please listen and ask God, what is he saying to me at this time? You know, in the Bible, we have a story about some men going through a storm. There was a storm on the sea, and the sailors, they didn't know what was happening. There was one man on board that ship who had a message of hope for everybody, who had the answer to all these questions and all the fears that the people were going through, all the panic that they were going through. And do you know where he was? He was tucked away in his bed. He was sleeping. That was Jonah. And maybe, I hope not, but that could be maybe a picture of the church during this difficult time that we are going through. Instead of sharing our hope and sharing the answers that God has given us, we're actually sleeping. We are worried about other things. We are spending time with other things instead of getting hold of the main thing. Of course, in this time, we've not been able to have any fellowship. We've not been able to meet together. We've been separated from our brothers and sisters. We've been separated from our pastors, from our elders, from our leaders, from people who've been mentoring us. We've not been able to meet with them. Maybe we have met with them online in a Zoom conference or so on. And perhaps this is something that God is doing with us. He's shaking our personal lives and He's asking us, how are we living with Him? What is our relationship to Him? And perhaps in the past our relationship has been via our pastor, because we had such a good pastor, such a godly person, such a man of faith, a man of the word, a man of prayer, or a lady of faith, a lady of prayer, and so on. We've been living on their relationship, or the relationship of other people, or friends, and so on. But actually we've got to stand before God personally, by ourselves. And this is a chance that we have to increase, to let our own personal relationship with God grow. And that's a challenge that I want to leave you with for today, for this weekend. I hope you have a good time. I hope God blesses you. And please spend time and try to answer some of these challenges that I have given you. God bless you. And I hope to see you on Monday. You're Bob Hatton.